gonna start standing at the top of our mats. So go ahead and come into mountain pose, checking in with that mountain pose posture. Pelvic bowl is upright, so it's not tipping forward, not tipping back. Shoulders will stack right over the pelvis. We're gonna start with some hip hinges, so we'll reach the arms forward and up. Really glide your shoulder blades up towards your ears. Bring your fingers to your hip creases right where your thigh bone meets the hips, and exhale, really hinge at the hips, pressing those hip creases back without tipping the pelvis. So check for any arching in the low back. Feel your glutes kick on as you hinge at the hips, and we'll just do that a few more times. Inhale the arms forward and up, glide the shoulder blades up, exhale, hands to the hip creases. Sit those hips back, so we're in that triple flexion of the ankles, knees, and hips. Think about that broom behind your back. Press into the feet, reach the arms forward and up. Lift the shoulder blades. Exhale, sit back into the hips. Press those hip creases back. Press into the feet, rise to stand. One more. Reach those shoulder blades up. Exhale, hands to the hip creases. Move back, hinging at the hips. Feel your glutes. Press into the feet, rise to stand. Release your arms down. Hands will come to the front and back of the pelvis. So pubic bone and sacrum, give a little squeeze together. Flex your right hip. So we're just lifting that right foot up. It doesn't need to be very high. We just want to make sure there's no movement in the pelvis or the spine. Left glute is really strong. Step it down and we'll switch. Flex that left hip. Doesn't need to be very high. We're just making sure the movement is only in that hip joint. Right glute stays active. Step it down. Hold the pelvic bowl upright as you alternate flexing the right hip and the left hip. So it's very little movement anywhere but at the hip. Hold that right hip in flexion. From this position, we're going to step the ball of the right foot back for a high lunge. Both knees will bend, and we're evenly pressing our weight into the front and back foot. Check for any tipping here. Really think about drawing those pelvic points in. Reach your arms up. Anytime the arms lift up, lift your scapula, your shoulder blades up toward the ears, and make sure it feels like we're knitting those front ribs in so our ribs don't pop. One more breath here, firming both glutes, left and right. Release your hands. We're going to open toward the side of the mat, externally rotating the hips to whatever degree feels good, and we'll bend the knees for a squat. Check and make sure that your knees and toes are tracking the same direction. Arms will dangle, and we'll just alternate, rolling the right shoulder and left shoulder back. Make these circles as big as you can. We can move a little bit in the ribs, but really hold that pelvis still. So to hold the pelvis still, we need to have some engagement in the core and the glutes. Straighten your legs, step it back to the top of the mat. And again, one hand will come to the pelvis, front of the pelvis, back of the pelvis, give a little squeeze. And again, alternate flexing the left hip and the right hip. So it doesn't look like much, but we're really working on holding that pelvic bowl upright throughout this transition from right to left. Pause with that left hip inflection. Right glute is on. Step the ball of your left foot back, high lunge. Bend both knees, make sure we're not tipping forward here. Knit those front ribs in and we'll reach the arms up. Lift the whole rib cage up and away from the pelvis. Zipper that pubic bone up toward the belly. One more moment here. Lower your hands, open toward the side of the mat. Externally rotate the hips, bend your knees. So make sure knees and toes face the same direction. Think about that broom behind your back so that we don't lose this triple S alignment. Arms will dangle and we'll roll the shoulders up and back one at a time. Just moving the shoulder blades, noticing any areas that feel a little bit restricted. Straighten your legs, step it back to the top of the mat. Once again, hands come to front and back of the pelvis. Alternate flexing one hip at a time. Glutes stay active, pelvis stays neutral. Think about that broom behind behind your back. Pause with that right hip inflection. Left glute is very firm. Step your right foot back for warrior two. Check that pelvic bowl. Make sure it doesn't spill here. Draw those pelvic points in. Zipper that pubic bone up toward the belly. Reach your arms out. Reverse your warrior. Left arm comes up and over. Big stretch for the left side of the body. Release that right ear. Back to warrior two. Left forearm to the thigh. Right arm comes up and over. Release that left ear to the shoulder. Big stretch for the right side of the ribs. Back to warrior two. Reverse it. Warrior two. Variation, forearm to the thigh. Keep drawing those pelvic points in. Back to warrior two. One more time, reverse it. Back to warrior two. Variation, forearm to the thigh. Draw those pelvic points in and firm this right glute, that back leg. Back to warrior two. Good, hold your warrior two and circle your arms back. Making the circles start in the shoulder blades or the scapula. Try not to let the ribs pop. So everything in the front body zippers up and we just move the shoulder blades. Bring your hands to the sides of your pelvis. Straighten that left leg. Turn the left toes forward. So both feet are parallel and we'll take some side lunges. Bend into that right knee. Bring your hands to your hip creases just like we did when we were working on that hip hinge. Moving the hips back. Make sure we don't tip forward here. So keep drawing those pelvic points in. Think about that triple S staying aligned. Side lunge to the left. Sit that left hip crease back so that left hip is really flexing. Side lunge to the right. Side lunge to the left. Side lunge to the right. Side lunge to the left. Stand back up. Make your way back to the top of the mat. Hands to the front and back of the pelvis. Give a little squeeze. And again, alternate flexing the left hip and right hip. Hold that neutral pelvis. So the whole time we're thinking about drawing those pelvic points in, keeping that broom behind your back. Pause with that left hip inflection. Right glute is on. Left foot steps back, warrior two. Make sure we're not tipping forward here. So again, tailbone grounds down, pubic bone lifts up. Reach the arms out. Reverse your warrior, left hand to the left leg, right arm comes up and over. Big stretch for the right side of the ribs. Left ear releases to the shoulder. Warrior two. Variation, right forearm to the thigh, left arm up and over. Squeeze this left glute. Back to warrior two. Reverse it. Let the ear release. Draw those pelvic points in. Warrior two. Variation, forearm to the thigh, left arm up and over. Release the right ear to the shoulder. Back to warrior two. One more time, reverse it. Warrior two. Variation, forearm to the thigh, stretch the left side of the ribs. Squeeze that left glute. Back to warrior two. Hold your warrior two and circle the arms back. So circles are starting in our scapula, our shoulder blades. Knit those front ribs in so nothing in the front body pops out of alignment. Keep drawing those pelvic points in. Hands will come to the sides of the pelvis. Straighten that right leg. Parallel the feet facing the sides of the mat. Let's do one hand in front, one hand in back again for our side lunges this time. Bend into that left knee. Hip creases move back. So we're really thinking about hinging at that left hip, pressing into the pinky toe of that right foot. Bend into the right knee, side lunge to the right. Press into the pinky toe of that left foot. Side lunge to the left. So we're keeping the glutes strong and the core strong. Side lunge to the right. Thinking about that broom behind our back. Side lunge to the left. Side lunge to the right. Zipper that pubic bone up to the belly. One more. Side lunge to the left. Side lunge to the right. Stand back up. Step back to the top of your mat. Coming into chair pose. Again, we'll bring our fingers right to the hip creases. Hinge at the hips. So we really want to move the hip creases back. Check where the knees end up. So they should be right above the ankles, not further forward than the toes. Zipper that pubic bone up. Think about that broom behind your back. We'll bring the hands to the heart. Pausing here in chair. Check where your knees are. So knees and toes should face the same direction. We're going to try not to wiggle in the pelvis or the lower body and just rotate the rib cage maybe 1 or 2 inches to the right, but look down at the knees. Make sure your knees haven't swiveled and then come back to center. Hold that pelvis still and only rotate the thoracic spine, just the ribs, maybe 1 or 2 inches to the left. Back to center. Rotate your ribs to the right. Back to center. Rotate to the left. Back to center. One more. Rotate to the right. Back to center. Rotate to the left. Back to center. Hold here. One more breath. Glutes are nice and strong. Good. Press into the feet. Rise to stand. Let's interlace the hands at the sacrum, right at the low back. We're just interlacing the fingers or the knuckles, not the whole hands. So we want to interlace the hands and draw those shoulder blades together. So the shoulder blades retract in toward the spine without popping the ribs. So really knit those front ribs in. Think about zippering up from the pubic bone to the chest, and just the back body starts to draw in. Chin toward the throat. We're going to press into the big toes. Lift the heels. Lower down. Keep drawing those shoulder blades in. Lift the heels. Press into the big toes. Lower down. Lift the heels, press into the big toes. Lower down. Lift the heels, press into the big toes. Lower down. 2 more. Lift the heels. Hold that neutral pelvis. Lower down. Last one. Lift the heels. Lower down. Release your arms. You can roll the shoulders a little bit if that feels good. Coming back to that mountain pose. Check that the shoulders are stacking over that upright pelvis. So really zipper that pubic bone up. Hands will come to the heart. We'll flex this right hip. Firm your left glute. Tap your right foot over toward the left side of the foot and then pick it back up. Tap it over to the outside of the left foot, keeping that left glute strong. Pick it back up. Good. Tap it over, working our core, working our balance. Tap it over. Pick it back up. Tap it over. Pick it back up. Pause here. Without the pelvis turning to the right, you're going to externally rotate that right hip. So the whole pelvis doesn't move, just that hip joint. Plant it for tree wherever it lands. You can have the toes on the ground. You can have the foot anywhere on that left leg, but really check in with that left glute, left hip. We want to make sure it's not sinking out to the side. So squeeze that left glute. Hold that upright pelvic bowl. Gaze wherever you'd like. Somewhere in front of you. We just want to make sure we're not looking down while we balance. Check back in with that big breath. Try not to hold your breath. Release it down, shake out that left foot a little bit, and we'll switch sides. Finding that mountain pose again, check that pelvic bowl, shoulders stack right on top of the pelvis. Hands come to the heart, flex that left hip, firm that right glute. Cross that left foot on the outside of the right foot, pick it back up so that left hip is in flexion, cross it over. Pick it back up. Keep firming that right glute. Cross it over. Tap it down. Pick it up. Cross it over. Back to flexion. One more. Cross it over. Back to flexion. Hold that pelvis neutral. Externally rotate the left hip. Plant it for tree anywhere it lands. Firm that right glute to hold that right femur in place so it doesn't jut out to the side. Zipper that pubic bone up. Gazing anywhere in front of you. Notice your breath. Relax your jaw, your forehead. Release it down, shake out that right foot. You can stand with the feet in mountain pose or take it out a little bit further. Right arm will reach up, glide that right scapula up toward the ear, left ear comes to the left shoulder, and we'll start to slide this left arm down the leg as far as you can, getting a big side body stretch in that right side. Come back up, release it down, switching sides, left arm up. Glide that left scapula up toward the ear, right ear comes to the shoulder, right arm slides down the leg, side body stretch for that left side. Come back up, release it down, coming to mountain pose. Arms can come to your sides, or you can have your hands to your heart. Eyes can stay open or closed. And we'll just take a few deep breaths here. Taking a moment to thank yourself for your practice. Sending one grateful thought out into the universe. Thank you for practicing with me today.